we remind the readers that you're talking about judgments in lots of different areas in the book. And unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about all of them in any great detail, but from medicine to forensic science to, as you say, forecasting, future casting. But the law is especially interesting because it is where we're having a wider public debate right now about how well the judiciary system functions. And of course, that's not just to do with the decisions made by judges, but it does seem to me that some of the instances of noise, as you define them in your book, are also being brought forward to say, well, we should be thinking about justice in a very different way, that you can't discount background, you can't discount some of these other extrajudicial factors when you are making a judgment. And I guess I'm thinking about the ways in which we're seeing that there are disproportionate criminalizations of the African American population with certain uses of the system. I want, if you can, to ask you, can you make a connection between the ideas of noise and bias that may apply to individual decisions, and then perhaps is noise something that can can affect an entire system of justice?
Well, in fact, noise is by definition a problem of the system. Noise is not a problem of the individual, except to the extent that there is the occasion noise that we were just talking about. So there is some variability within your own judgment. You are not exactly the same person this morning and this afternoon, or next Friday and last Monday. But that's actually a small component of noise, and it's actually difficult to identify. By far, the largest components of noise have to do with what we call system noise. So it's the noise in, for instance, the judicial system or in the medical system. It doesn't make sense if a lottery essentially assigns you to a doctor when you walk into a hospital with a problem, that two different doctors wouldn't give you the same diagnosis. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not a very defensible proposition to say that depending on which judge you are assigned to, you're going to get a very different verdict. And to come back to the point you are making about the judicial system, if we said that, or when we say, because or when we read, because we do read it, that different people get very different sentences because of the color of their skin, that is, of course, entirely unacceptable. That's a bias. Now, if we say that different people get a completely different sentence because of the randomness of the lottery that assigns a judge to them, and that assigns the moment when that particular judge is going to be in a particular set of moods or dispositions, that somehow is a problem that we don't find as shocking. But in fact, when you look at the numbers, when you actually look at the evidence, that type of discrepancy, that noise, is in fact very shocking. One classic study that goes back several decades in the US took 16 different cases and showed them to 208 federal judges and asked them, what would you sentence this particular defendant to? And these were very simplified cases where the potential for variation is obviously less than in real cases. And to make a long story short, the average sentence was 7 years in prison. The effect of one judge rather than another judge, so the mean difference between two judges looking at the same case was more than 3.5 years. That basically means that if your just sentence, let's suppose that there is a just sentence, is 7 years, just because you're assigned to Judge X rather than Judge Y, it's going to be either 5 years or 9 years. That's a problem, I think. And that's a problem that we're not as aware of as we are aware, as we should, of the problems that bias causes.
Hachette,